Okay. All right. Good evening, members of committee. I see that we have quorum, and I call this regular meeting of General Committee for Tuesday, May 22nd, 2012 to order. First, we will adopt the agenda. It's been moved by Councillor Kersey, second by Councillor Papp, that the agenda for the May 22nd, 2012 regular meeting of General Committee be adopted. Any discussion or amendments? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Do any members of committee have to disclose any pecuniary interest? No. Okay, thank you. Please note that in the minutes. The next item is hearing of presentations and or delegations. We have one delegation this evening, and it is Ms. Patty Fagan from Cafe on Main. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. If you'd like to join us at the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors and staff. My presentation tonight to Pelham Town Council for approval to operate a licensed outdoor patio is as follows. Beginning with the end in mind, imagine for a moment the community improvement plan in full development. Small to medium businesses providing destination-type services for our residents and visitors alike. That Pelham is known as the place for breakfast, lunch, dinner, stay to shop, pamper yourself, get your essentials, take care of business, and be amazed at all we offer destination. I am here today to present a win-win opportunity for the Town of Pelham and our business to bring this vision and more to fruition. As stated in the Town of Pelham Community Improvement Plan, Section 6.1.2, Vision for the Downtown Fonthill, more gathering places for social interaction opportunities, including outdoor patios and cafe. More destination-type uses that accommodate longer stays in the downtown. The cafe has become this type of gathering place for people, accommodating them in a longer visit in the downtown core. An outdoor patio will only continue to enhance this essential environment. Confirmation of this win-win strategy is again taken from the Town Community Improvement Plan, Section 1.0, Land Use, Urban Design, and Public Realm Improvement Strategy. The overall experience of downtown visitors, shoppers, and residents is paramount to the success of downtown revitalization efforts. Therefore, enhancing the quality of the pedestrian experience along main streets and the sense of place in the downtown is a principal method in which a downtown can remain vibrant and even competitive with contemporary shopping areas. The downtown vision can only be achieved through a combination of public sector, Town of Pelham, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and private sector, property and business owners, efforts. Both the public and private sectors have important and interconnected roles to play and therefore need to communicate and coordinate their efforts and actions. With recent adoption of the new official plan, which includes the East Fonthill expansion with commercial development, it has become even more paramount for the town to seek interconnectedness and communicate and coordinate their efforts with existing businesses. The request put forth today falls into Section 7.1.2.2 in regards to Pelham Street. The overall vision for the Pelham streetscape is of a tighter street right-of-way that is oriented to the pedestrian and promotes walking. Therefore, it is recommended that the streetscape improvements along Pelham Street include consideration of private patio areas within the public right-of-way that conform to urban design guidelines and do not obstruct pedestrian travel routes along the sidewalk. Summerfest celebrations last year provided us with a patio trial run, taking into consideration new liquor licensing laws, managing an additional 59 seats, and a new level of busyness for staff and management. The response from the community was outstanding. The positive feedback included comments such as, "Hope the town's going to let you have this all summer long." And, "This is just what we're looking for, a place to have coffee on the patio in the morning or a glass of wine in the evening. Perfect." We ask that the town work together with us to put the necessary approvals in place to operate another successful patio, this time for the whole summer season and not just one day. The benefits for the town would include contributing to the development of a distinct downtown destination point for both existing residents and visitors, support downtown retail shopping activity, and contribute to a more pedestrian-friendly environment. The benefits for the cafe include rebounded growth following the impact of downtown construction, expansion of business year-round, increased exposure, and the ability to continue our contribution to the community as a whole. Thank you for taking the time and consideration to imagine the possibilities.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fagan, for your presentation and for the documents you provided to us. I wonder if members of council have any questions for you at this time. Questions for Ms. Fagan? I have a question, if no other member of council wants to go first. And certainly I appreciate all of the work that you put in this and the additional information you provided in the organization of what the proposed seating would look like. I was surprised to see the sidewalk kind of as a buffer between your storefront and the proposed area here. I was last year in Halifax, and it was the other way around. It was the patio was right up against the establishment, the business, and then the sidewalk was kind of rerouted, in that case, into parking areas. I know this isn't a parking area, although it's often used as a parking area. I do note that you put in your presentation information saying that it's not supposed to encumber pedestrians, etc. Is that why you did it, or did you do it for other reasons? Would you look at moving that sidewalk against the roadway as opposed to against your business?
Thank you. One of the considerations I had is my sensitivity to the disability parking that is at the corner of Town Square. Mm. And my thought was anyone who might have a disability would find it easier, in my thought, to maneuver along the sidewalk to right. get to, to go past me to the bank, or any place north, any business north of me, okay. rather than having to go out and around. Right. Yeah, I have seen some of the designs that you speak of, and my thought, and in the new liquor licensing law allows us to do that, is to carry across.
This proposal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I hadn't thought of that element, so thank you for that. Do other members of council have any questions at this time? Councillor Kersey.
Thank you for your presentation. As you know, I've been a supporter of this type of direction for a long time. I wonder if you would be willing to take a couple of minutes to talk about the aesthetics that you're thinking about providing and the safety features that you might be incorporating into this with respect to buffering from the traffic lanes of traffic.
Yeah. First of all, I thank you. I apologize for not having that in place. We are in discussions with a local business person who works with recycled wood products, and we are looking at building in a buffer, if you will, of planters and rigid. He referred to it as Councillor Clark. You might be able to help me out. It would be like, I guess, the top railing of fencing, if you were to put decking fencing in, and it would be the top rail. Okay. So he's working on a system of using that, like a top rail piece, and locking it into planters that would be placed along particularly the Pelham Street side of of the cafe, or of the patio, and then bringing that around and also acting as sort of anchors along the way, not just at the corners, but throughout the whole forum. So it's not just a matter of putting up stanchions in a piece of road.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
I wonder also, is the success or failure of your patio or your willingness to move ahead with your patio completely contingent upon the approval of the entire number of persons? Or if council saw fit to reduce the number of seats to 30, would that be a deal breaker? Or I'd just like to hear your comments on your thoughts about with respect to the seating capacity.
I am at this point, making the presentation, hoping of course to receive favor for the 42. However, I would definitely be open to negotiations and or concessions. I guess would be a better word to move this forward.
Okay.
It's my desire to enter into a favorable agreement and move it forward.
Good. Okay, thank you. Councillor Durley.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. And Patty, I appreciate the fact that we did have a meeting at the cafe, and you showed me the original outline of this, and that really makes me understand this a lot better. But through you, Mr. Mayor, to our CAO, perhaps, the number of persons in respect to the question Councillor Kersey made would be determined by alcohol and gaming, and also by certain planning regulations, is it not? Washroom facilities and all that play into it. So perhaps we wouldn't have any control over that number. These things are already in place. But, is there such legislation that guides us?
Mr. Lormer?
You're correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through AGCO and the Ontario Building Code, there are certain requirements that dictate seating.
That would be a minimum and a maximum that they would have, or?
Yes, and I had a brief conversation with Mr. Jennings, our chief building official, and he indicated that there's a certain threshold for seating and washroom requirements, and there may be some opportunity to address that by the number of seats that are available inside the restaurant and outside the restaurant. But that is something that, in all likelihood, would have to be addressed by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission.
Okay. So if further to that, so a recommendation that would come forth from staff in this regard would certainly deal with the recommendations and the reporting from those other outside forces, and in fact the number of seats would be included based on all of that evidence, right?
That would be my intention. If this matter is referred to staff for a report, then that would be our intention, yes.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any comments on that, Ms. Fagan, or no? You've been in contact with the Alcohol Gaming Commission or whatever it is.
With the local inspector.
Oh, good.
And I met with him during Summerfest, and then we met again briefly after, and he basically said, go big. Go big and go for it. Yeah.
Well, we certainly appreciate your continuing to do that and the leadership that you're showing on this, and your comment that you started the presentation with, that you want us to think big, so we appreciate that. Do other members have any questions at this time? We will have a motion to receive, and no? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Fagan. Appreciate it. So I do have a motion that has been proposed by Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the delegation information presented by Patty Fagan regarding a request to permit Cafe on Main to operate an outdoor patio annually from April 1st to October 31st in front of the building known municipally as 1455 Pelham Street be received and referred to staff for report. Some of those items that Councillor Durley indicated will be in part of that report. I wonder if other members have any clarity or questions or comments they'd like to make at this time. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Because of the importance of time in this factor, I'd like to add to the motion that the report be brought at our next general committee meeting.
Okay. We'll take that as an amendment.
Yes, that's right.
Seconded by Councillor Clark for report on June 4th, 2012, General Committee. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Larmer, is that possible?
We will do all that we are able to get that.
Okay, thank you, glad to hear that. Any discussion to that amendment? Going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That amendment is carried. Now to the amended motion. Thank you for raising that. Any further comments or questions at this time? There being none, I'm going to call the question on the amended motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried as amended. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Fagan. I look forward to that report, staff. Thank you. And to continue to move this forward. So thank you very much. Our next item is consent agenda item. We have one for block approval, and that's the Canada Day Committee meeting of April 23rd. So it has been moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Papp, that the following consent agenda item be received for information: Canada Day Committee meeting minutes of April 23rd, 2012. Any discussion on that? There being none, I call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. Thank you. The next item is business subdivisions. The first is corporate services, chaired by Councillor Durley. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to Corporate Services. First order of business before us is moved by Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Papp, that report CAO 4/12, Fire Station Number 2, landscaping be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That staff be directed to create a landscaping plan for consideration during the deliberation of the 2013 budget. Questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries unanimously. Good. Next order of business. Moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Clark. That report CAO/5-12, Fire Station Number 3, facility review be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That General Committee Corporate Services Division recommend that Council approve the terms of reference included as attachment number 2 to this report, and further that staff be directed to obtain cost estimates and report to Council with a recommended course of action. Questions or comments? Councilor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have one brief question. It says that staff would be directed to obtain cost estimates. Is that just by way of a telephone call, or would that be by way of an RFP in a more formal matter, where the data would be incorporated in an RFP, put out in our normal course of events, and we'd get that feedback back?
I'll defer that to our acting CAO.
Thank you. Based on previous work that was done with Station 2, I believe that the cost for this type of a project may be fairly low. So it would be a situation where the town would be just contacting a number of qualified people that are engaged in this type of work, and indicating to them that this is the scope of work that we're looking for. And I'm expecting the estimates would be fairly low, under $10,000 for sure, so that we would be able to report back to council with a manner in which they could be funded, and do that, I would hope, fairly quickly. So it wouldn't be a full RFP. There's no need for that based on what we anticipate the cost being.
I see.
Go ahead.
Do you have a timeline on that, Mr. Larmer, or that you were hoping to bring this forward?
Well, this is a general committee recommendation, so if it goes to council and is approved on June 4th, and assuming that it is recommended tonight, we would start preparing to contact consultants after June 4th.
Other questions or comments? Councilor Ribbiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder whether we might be in a position to bring to the next council meeting information with regard to the cost of that. We've lost a little bit of time due to circumstances that we all regret and were beyond our control, and we've lost a meeting in considering this over the past month. However, budget season for 2013 isn't going to be delayed because of that, though I suspect that the amount of work that the successful reporter will have to do is not going to become any less. So I wonder whether we might truncate that time a little bit by doing some work and bringing to next council meeting both the recommendation and the information, and we might be able to proceed that much more quickly.
This is what I just heard the CAO say, isn't it? That you can bring this forward?
I was suggesting that we wouldn't actually get the estimates until June 4th, until council ratifies.
Okay, it has to be ratified by council. So, in fact, General Committee now recommends to council. So, unfortunately, process, I think, stands in the way of that.
Does it necessarily have to? I mean, could we not have the information available at that time in anticipation of a positive response to the motion? I'm asking. I'm not attempting to put anybody on the spot. It's just that we have lost a meeting in the general course of dealing with this.
Madam Treasurer, is there a comment on that?
The process will follow the informal quotation process at this point because we're expecting it to be about under the $10,000 limit. We could go out for quotes, however, with the understanding that the vendor is fully aware that this is not an approved expenditure. We are simply looking for quotes at this time, and pending a meeting on June 4th, that approval process would dictate whether the quote was going to be looked at in a manner of awarding a bid. And in doing that, though, sometimes you get where the bid isn't exactly the best estimate because they're just trying to put some information together for the sake of providing an estimate and then want a chance to revise that. But we can confirm that that would be a bid that was a 30-day bid and that it is pending analysis and acceptance on June 4th and proceed at this time with that.
Okay, but this cost estimate would not be the cost of a new facility. It would be just the cost of what's going on.
Functional program analysis.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, you had a question?
I did, and it was exactly that point, Mr. Chair, and that's that what we're talking about here is the design requirements, which is number 3 in the terms of reference. That's what we're talking about, the design requirements. So it's kind of the first step, the precursor for an architectural design or conceptual plan or anything moving forward. So I just want to clarify that, Mr. Chair. Is that the case?
Yeah, and that's the question that I had.
That's what we're doing.
That's right.
And I appreciate that because we have followed this similar process when it came to fire station number 2. We followed it as well with the potential for a library, and we know what those Maple Acre Library in the western part of Pelham. So we know what some of those design requirements do and how they help move the process forward. So I appreciate that clarity, and I think it would be important if we could have that information for council as well, and maybe we can move this forward quickly. So I, for one, would be in favor of trying to get that information at our council meeting so that council can not only take this recommendation, but also any recommendations from staff and consider it and perhaps approve them. Thank you.
There is a consideration that I have in this, and I'll direct the question to the treasurer. Is there any budget in the 5-year forecast for any considerations of capital expense for a second fire station? I know operating budgets would control all that, but the capital expense budget, I know our strategic plan has cited different projects that we are going to go to. And in fact, the new fire hall, I don't believe is one of them. However, if in fact we were to go ahead with this, we would need to bump something out of the 5-year plan. Just your thoughts and comments on that, Madam Treasurer?
Just for this this one that we expect under 10,000, the design phase, that would have to be funded through either our working funds or the fire station fire reserve. However, for a new facility, there is nothing in the capital budget at this time.
Okay, so basically the 5-year spending capital projects would need to be amended if in fact we were going to go ahead with this.
That's correct.
And we have to take something out in order to make room for that. If it goes forward, right?
Right, depending on the funding, because if it's under debt obligations, we have to be concerned with our debt repayment limit that the ministry sets for us.
Okay.
And that's already an issue for 2014.
Okay, some debt is dropping off, but we do have issues with that in 2014, you're saying?
Yeah, and other debt is going to be taken on at that time.
Okay, so all that needs to be considered. It's deeper than that. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, so that what I'm hearing is by June the 4th, if staff's in a position, not putting in pressure, that you could come up with the recommended appropriate provider of the service. We just want to, we don't want to just push we want to do it right. I understand the timing issue, but if you're in a position to bring it forth on June 4th, then we can approve it and we can get going. Is that fair?
Typically for an informal quotation, it takes about a week to get all the bids back, so we should have that in plenty of time.
Thank you, that's all I need. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, so we know, I don't think there's a need to amend this. In fact, the direction is that when the report does come back, it will include an estimate of these numbers, and so that we can proceed as quickly as possible. Okay? Understood by everyone?
Yep.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. Moved by Councillor Papp, seconded by Councillor Clark, that the report CAO 3/12 Library Needs Analysis be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. The General Committee Corporate Services Division recommend that Council approve the terms of reference included as attachment number 1 to this report, and further that staff be directed to obtain cost estimates and report to Council with a recommended course of action. Questions or comments?
Perfect.
Councillor Kersey.
Thank you. I would have similar comments to those that were made with reference to the fire station. I would like to see this moved ahead as quickly as possible. The initial report was brought from the committee June, July, and events that were beyond our control have interrupted this. So I would like to see this brought forward sooner rather than later. With respect to whether there's money in the 2012 budget, I think through the course of our budget process and discussions, we discussed that, and were assured that there would be funds available either from the working reserve or we would have to find them somewhere else. Anticipating that the costs are going to be in the same magnitude as our CAO has indicated for the fire station. Leading up to this meeting, I did discuss the report with the chair of the library board, because the scope of the terms of reference are in fact significantly larger than the scope of the recommendation of the library or the Maple Acres committee, which basically was dealing with the Maple Acres replacement. The only concern that was expressed by himself and myself was that we don't want Maple Acres issue to be lost in the generality of the looking at the entire library service. I understand fully where our CAO is coming from with respect to looking at the whole library service. But I think it's also very important that we not lose sight of the specific issue, which is the Maple Acres replacement. We need to, for the community's sake, for the library board's sake, and for the functionality of the library, settle that question once and for all. It's been ongoing for 3 or 4 years now, and in fact, some monies have been raised for that replacement. Unauthorized, whatever that may be, Mr. Chair, but I think we need to put the question to rest. And it was the committee's feeling that going out to the community finding out what type of service they wanted, what type of service they would support, both financially and through utilization, and in fact, try and define what type of service would be best suited for that part of our municipality. So they are all addressed in the terms of reference. I just want to make sure that when we seek our quotation, that we emphasize to the person's quoting that is first and foremost the most important aspect of it. The rest is important to direct the development of the library services as we move forward over the next 5 to 10 years. But I also think it's imperative that we deal with the Maple Acres issue on the short term. So
Now, do you want this rush issue to go ahead of the other rush issue, which is another rush issue?
Well, I understand your comments, Mr. Chair, but I want to point out that this issue's been ongoing for 3 or 4 years, and in fact, the motion for the committee was brought in June or July of this past year, whereas the Station 3 actually only got on board later in the year or early this year. So if anything has to be put to the back burners, I would suggest that the Station 3 needs to be put to the back burners and the Maple Acres needs to be brought to the fore, at least if we're going to try and be bringing reports sooner rather than later.
That is one of the issues behind the question that I did ask earlier with the other comment. So, we're putting a lot on our plates here, and I think staff has to be cognizant of the fact that we can't do all of them at once, but, perhaps they can give some idea to the prioritizing of these issues and to bring that forth. And I'm sure the needs analysis will tell us a large story, and leave it to staff to do the best they can to get it to us as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. Okay, does that work? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a question regarding the needs, and it's outlined at the last page of the report, this needs assessment. So we already do have that functional plan that was done previously for the Maple Acre branch, and so we have that portion. As I understand it, though, this is more working together with the public. Certainly the first portion of this needs assessment is consulting with library staff and compiling and analyzing library records, statistics, etc. That the Maple Acre Library Committee was so wanting through its discussions. But also consulting, it says here, Mr. Chair, consulting with library staff, town staff, library users, and the general public to determine satisfaction with the current levels of service, engage the public through a series of workshops to determine the importance of each. I guess my question, Mr. Chair, is this seems to me to be a larger body of work than a functional analysis. It would seem to me that it would not be necessarily in the order of under 10,000. It might be larger than that. Is that correct? Am my assumption correct? Can the CAO indicate whether we should expect a higher amount, or would it be in the neighborhood of the 10,000 that we spoke about with the prior report?
There's a lot going on in this terms of reference, but perhaps the comment Mr. CAO would perhaps estimate the level of service and the level of cost that may be involved. Definitely, there's a lot of consultation going to be going on.
There is a good degree of consultation going on. I would expect that it would happen within a relatively short period of time, so it wouldn't be an ongoing process like the official plan or the community improvement plan.
Okay.
So it's my estimation that it could be under $10,000.
Okay.
That will come.
That's my hope.
That will come through in the report, I'm sure.
Always one's hope that it's
That's
less
right,
than.
that's right.
I look forward to receiving that information when it comes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so it's understood that, Councilor Pat?
Yeah, and not to, with all due respect to Councillor Kersey, the work on Station 3 basically is just a functional analysis. It's not to the scope, and I agree. When you read this, and having had some experience, and I hope, Mr. CEO, you're right, you're looking at basically addressing the level of service of library across the board, current and future, the way I read it, plus looking at the current physical assets, which include Maple Acres, including the Fonthill Library. So that is quite important, and I think that can go hand in hand. I mean, ours is basically the work that's being done at Fire Station 3 is it's providing some sort of a conceptual idea of where we need to go. So I think both things can happen, particularly if you pick the right, if we have, which we do, in some cases, the right kinds of providers of that service, it can be done. But I don't want to take away from either, because the Maple Acres has been on the books for a while. But this scope of work, I hope you're right, Craig. It sounds, maybe it isn't. But it seems like, functional layout of existing libraries, utilization rates, maybe it's all there. Maybe that can be done. But it is critical for us to also address where are we going with that whole level of service in the library? What are we doing with it? For us, I'm not oversimplifying Fire Station 3. Fire Station 3 is a replacement of a building and a functionality that I think can be done fairly quickly and sets the stage for that consideration, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, about capital requirements. So I think you can do both if provided you got the working funds to hire the providers. I think nothing needs to be held back. Yeah, I don't think this is, I know the scope of work we're looking at is, once we get that done, it'll be similar to what we did with Fire Station 2.
Those
The library is more intense. I think it's more complex, definitely more complex. And just my past experience would suggest, and I'm not saying the numbers, and I depend on, it could be more, and of course you want to do, because there's a lot in there that you're asking about. It's like examining a whole level of business. Like, what do you, forget if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. That's the way I look at it. It's not just the physical asset itself.
Yeah, those determinations will be made when the staff reports do come back.
Yeah.
So, Mr. CAO first, and then I'll go to you.
Right.
I do recognize that the recommendation that I prepared was more comprehensive than what the committee had actually asked for.
Right.
They were asking to be focused on Maple Acres. My opinion is that you need to look at Maple Acres in the context of the of the whole of library service. So clearly that is going to involve a little more work than was originally anticipated. So if there is something that council wants to see that is different, then we need to know that now before we start going out and asking for estimates.
Councilor Kersey.
Mr. Chair, I couldn't agree with our CAO more. I do think that it will be helpful to look at the role of Maple Acres in the entire context of providing service, together with the fact that our main library, the board was considering doing an architectural study this year to see how they could optimize the space that they do have. So this may dovetail and lead to that. We have some of the preliminary reports that have been done certainly have quantified the sizes and the basic layouts and all of that sort of thing. So I think what will be helpful here is the engagement to the public in that whole process. I think that was something that was recognized by the Maple Acres group, that the engagement of the public and the feedback from the public was lacking. And so if we include the entire community in that, I don't see that that's going to be a great deal of additional cost. The one proviso or the one concern that I have and the chair of the library board has is that we don't want the Maple Acres issue to be lost in the shuffle of looking at the whole library service. And I think our CAO understands that and can address that with the people who are voting on the project report. And Mr. Councillor Pack, if I could speak to you directly, yes. I was not trying to prioritize. The question was put forward in terms of how we would prioritize that, and all I was commenting on was this was on the books before that. It's not that chief that I don't want fire services because I live in that area, so I want fire services from Station 3. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I hope you allow me a little latitude here to, because we've talked about this, he's holding the gavel, but we've talked about this library branch, but there are a number of dedicated volunteers that have been actively working over a number of years to improve that branch. They're called the Friends of the Maple Acre Library. And the reason I specifically want to thank them is because they have a little bit of a fundraiser coming up this Friday as part of the celebrations with the Fenwick Lions Carnival. So prior to the parade on Friday, they do have a barbecue and they sell hot dogs and hamburgers and all those kind of things. So certainly encourage all members of council and the community to attend and perhaps buy a burger there and support the efforts of the Friends of Maple Acre Library. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the
Opinions expressed are not necessarily those.
duly noted.
Any
Mr.
other
Chair.
questions, comments, or commercials? Councilor Ribbiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to underline a couple of things that I've heard that I think need supporting. I think the first of those is that it's awfully hard to prioritize, and I don't think that we would want to choose a priority of, do we want a library in the west side of Pelham, or do we need a fire station on the west side of Pelham? Both institutions are needed, both are used, both are staffed or supported by volunteers. Both institutions, both buildings are inadequate to their purpose, so there's a tremendous need on both those
I'm
those
just going
sides.
to call a stop to that, Councilor Rebecca. We've got off the track because not only do we need a new fire station, there are many things that this town needs, and certainly the tax bill has to remain at a level that everybody can afford things to do. So prioritizing is very necessary because we need roads, we need other things as well. So I appreciate that comment, but we're certainly getting way off the topic as far as this is concerned.
I'm going to articulate a point of order if I can. The fact of the matter is we are discussing what is on the agenda in front of us right now and not other things. It's these two things that I'm talking about, Mr. Chair, and I think that I have the opportunity to address those if I wish.
I'll give you that latitude. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. I don't know how much latitude that is, given that they are part of this agenda. My point is that we are asking staff to put some progress into two items that we have on our agenda in front of us today. We're not asking to choose one above the other. I think both are important to the communities that we represent. We have people who have a tremendous interest in both of those, a tremendous need for both of those. And I think they look to this group, our council, for leadership in having some of those things done. So what I want to say, Mr. Chair, is that I support the opinion that has been expressed here that both need to be done, that work on both should be done more quickly, that if we can forward those things without becoming the slave to process and see if we can truncate that a little bit in order to achieve something for the people who bring us here, I think that those are good things. And so I'm looking to commend you and your leadership in ensuring that this thing gets done, or these things get done quickly as we need them to be. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure that requires a great deal of latitude on this. I think that this speaks to the issues that are on the agenda in front of us, and I would want us to move on those.
And staff understands fully. Other questions or comments? Question? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That carries. And corporate services, community infrastructure, Councillor Clark.
Welcome to Community and Infrastructure Services. I have a motion here that report CIS 15/12 Development of the Municipal Cultural Master Plan and Cultural Assets Mapping Acceptance of Proposal be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That for reasons outlined in report CIS 15/12 General Committee, Community Infrastructure Services Division, recommend to Council the acceptance of consulting services for the development of a municipal cultural plan and cultural assets mapping by Sierra Planning and Management in the amount of $53,025. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to enter into an agreement with Sierra Planning and Management for the provision of consulting services. Questions or comments? Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Certainly appreciate the report and all of the work that's gone into it. It's certainly great news that the province has given us funding to undertake a cultural master plan and cultural asset mapping. My comment, Mr. Chair, is really, I appreciate what staff have done, and they've consolidated in this report what is meant by that. The report indicates, Mr. Chair, that culture is an inclusive term that relates to many aspects of our everyday lives and experience. The interconnections between people, history, art, performances, recreation, festivals, and downtown revitalization help to create a sense of community and can enhance the overall quality of life. I tried to explain that to somebody recently and probably didn't do a good job about what's meant by cultural assets, cultural planning, those kind of things. So I certainly appreciate staff putting it here in this report and allowing us to communicate that with members of the community about what the plan is moving forward. I do have a question, Mr. Chair. Having said that, what's the timing? I think the original timing was within a year. Do we know the timing that this firm will be providing with this amount should it get approved?
I'll ask Mr. CAO.
I cannot recall the exact timeline.
Yeah, and Mr. Mallon's not here tonight.
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair, if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead,
Councilor Kersey
Councilor.
remembers.
The original timeline was to begin in April and end in March 2013. Because of the length of time it took us to work through the process, we just received today the new timeline, which will be beginning at the end of May and still will be completed by the end of March 2013.
Excellent. I appreciate that clarity, and thanks for sitting on the committee to look over this. Thank you.
Right. Any further questions or comments? Councilor Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the original RFP was put out, it was anticipated that a steering committee would have been struck to work with the consultants. And initially, the anticipation was that the newly in the process forming Pelham Promotional Committee would work as the steering committee. Right. In discussing this a little further with our manager of community services, Vicki, today, she's of the opinion now that we probably should go with a slightly smaller committee, in that the size of the promotional committee could become unwieldy in trying to work with the consultant and move the process forward. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move an amendment to the motion that we would add that the director or manager of community services be directed to form a steering committee to work with the consultant throughout the process of developing the cultural mapping and cultural master plan.
Okay. Any further comments or that to the amendment, or proposed amendment, sorry?
I fully agree with that, and I would perhaps suggest that a member from the Heritage Committee should be considered to sit there as well, because they are dovetailing as well. So I think a point well taken, and if you agree with that, then that sort of closes the loop.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, Councilor Pat?
Just to clarify, I agree as well. And with Councilor, who would you see, Councilor Kersey, as being the steering committee? Vicki, a member of the Heritage Group, anybody else?
There would be a member of council. There would most likely be a member of some of the various cultural groups around, perhaps a service club member.
Okay.
Instead of calling for volunteers to sit, she would go out to the community and tap people that are directly involved in the various aspects of the culture of our community. So it'd be a hand-picked group.
Okay, so what, by this amendment, would we be giving her direction to go ahead and do that as soon as possible?
That's what I'm envisioning, yeah.
Once this is approved by council
Well,
next month?
we need to strike the committee as soon as possible, because the consultant, one of the first things he would want to do is to sit down with the steering committee and discuss the communication plan and the direction that he would like to take.
Mr. Mayor, do we need a second?
You need a seconder on the
Yeah.
Oh, I needed a seconder on the motion before we can
discuss the
continue.
amendment.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I need a seconder for this amendment. Councilor Pat?
Stops the steering committee, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Perhaps the director or the manager can come back at our next council meeting just to outline what that group could look like. Councillor Papp's question, and maybe that's what the CAO is going to recommend, but Councillor Papp's question of who would it be, et cetera. Just so maybe some clarity. I'm very supportive of the idea, and you're right, Councillor Kersey. That was talked about when the proposal was first put forward. Great idea to have somebody from the Heritage Committee, maybe from some representatives, if they're not. Many of them are double hatting on other events and things, but I think of folks like the Downtown Beautification Committee members, or even some band shell member committees or members that aren't directly related to the town. So we don't want it to get too big either. So I look forward to that report, perhaps coming back, Mr. Chair, and I know the CAO signaled he wants to comment on that too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's very important that this group remains small. There's going to be various opportunities for focus groups to be formed. So what we can do is put a report together and bring it back to a subsequent meeting of council, just to advise council what is going on with the formation of the steering committee.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having said all of that, I would not like us to give the indication to Vicky that she can't go out and start asking people to serve on it, that she could move ahead and establish the committee, but report back to us who is sitting on the committee. I mean, it's always easy to add another person if there's a section of the community that was felt was lost. But I would, in order for us to establish timelines and keep to timelines, we need to move ahead with the steering committee. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. CAO?
Yeah, if I may, what I would suggest, just to expedite this, is that perhaps it would be Councillor Kersey, Vicky, and I that would form the steering committee, and then we would put in the appropriate personnel as we go along.
Just let us
The
know.
three of us were the ones that were involved in the evaluation and interviewing the consultants.
Simple.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anyone else? Do we need to read that out first, the amendment, or?
I think everyone's aware of the amendment. The Manager of Community Services be directed to form a steering committee to begin the process. I think everyone's clear on that.
Okay, all right. So do we need to vote on the amendment?
Yep.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, now on the
Motion
entire motion. So,
as amended.
as amended. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? None? Okay, carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, and welcome to Planning and Development Services. We have one staff report. So that report has been moved by Councillor Gurley, seconded by Councillor Kersey. The report P18/12, application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number AM0511, John and Sue Campbell, 275 Church Street, be received, and that the recommendation contained therein be approved as follows. That for reasons outlined in Planning Report P15/12, General Committee Planning and Development Division, recommend that Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application AM05/11, John and Sue Campbell, part of Lot 15, Concession 14, former Township of Pelham, Town of Pelham, and further that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw amendment for consideration by Council. Comments or questions? Hearing none? Sorry, Councilor Rubio, go right ahead.
To do something about my inconspicuous appearance here in this corner.
I don't know,
not the
I
first-
miss you all the time.
You're not the only one who misses me,
You miss
Councillor
me,
Pat.
didn't you?
First of all, let me thank the staff for preparing the additional report to that which we discussed briefly in our last meeting. It seems to me that the issue with regard to moving forward with this is around the nature of and the extent of the commercial activity that is being proposed for this agricultural piece of land. What's being proposed is that a shop for the repair and maintenance of agricultural equipment be set up, and that this is suggested by staff as being appropriate because it's an appropriate use given the agricultural zoning. One of the issues which comes up, of course, is the question of what exactly is farm equipment and how does one tell whether it's farm equipment being repaired in an establishment like that, or is it something else? And what staff has indicated in the report is that you tell the difference by the nature of the license plates. There are farm plates and there are, I guess, civilian plates or non-farm plates. So my question is with regard to that, Mr. Chair, and perhaps through you to our acting CAO, is how do we enforce that? How do we control that an establishment that has been provided with permission to repair agricultural equipment is in fact only working on vehicles with the appropriate plates?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead, Mr. Acting CEO.
As with any other use, whether it's a residential subdivision or a commercial operation, when council passes a bylaw, it's assumed that the person that's carrying out the business on that property or that use on the property is complying with the bylaw. Council's method of ensuring that is essentially limited to the complaint basis of bylaw enforcement. So we don't typically go out and make sure that people are using their houses for residential purposes only, or that commercial operations are only selling retail goods, or that, in this case, farm vehicle repair establishment is only repairing farm vehicles. That's not how we do it. We essentially pass a bylaw saying that this is a use that we, or council passes a bylaw that says this is a use that we deem to be acceptable here, and we assume that you're going to carry out your operation in compliance with our bylaw. If we hear a complaint, then we'll go out and investigate.
Councilor Rubio?
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Acting CAO. So in effect, a concern that may exist in the community that a requested change in the bylaw might in fact involve at least the risk of the activity going beyond what is permitted is a well-founded concern. Because unless someone makes complaints with respect to a broader amount of activity than was originally anticipated, in fact, that activity can grow beyond the scope that's permitted.
I can't say that it's well-founded. When we have
Well-founded, just
when we have townhouse developments, there are people that will stand up in a meeting and say that drug dealers from Toronto are going to move into the townhouses. They can say that. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen.
no, but it does happen.
Well,
Yeah. And in
I don't
fact,
know why all the drug dealers are from Toronto, but apparently it does happen.
well, yeah, no, I mean my point I don't think is quite as late as that. We do know that in Pelham, it is known that when permission to do farm equipment, machinery repair and sales, for example, are permitted on agricultural land, it has grown beyond that. I mean, it's within the history of Pelham that has happened, and I think we're probably aware of that.
I'm not aware of that.
Well, I mean, we know that on Foss Road, for example, there is a business that went beyond the original scope of what was provided. At least it's my understanding that's the case. I may be wrong on that.
Yeah.
So we know that that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it can occur. So Mr. Chair, I know that staff has provided us with information that if we were to permit a change in the use on that particular property, we would be within the legal norm to do it. I'm not sure that just because we can, we necessarily should. I'm not convinced that we should, for a couple of reasons. One is that there is a concern within the community, the immediate community, that in fact the nature of the activity there may turn out to be different than what is provided. And also there is a concern that there is in fairly close proximity to that property, other commercial properties that are available for that kind of activity, should there be a need and a desire for people to be involved in it. And no change in zoning would be required to do that. So again, I'm just pointing out that I'm not convinced that it's necessary to make that change, and I'm not sure that I will be voting. In fact, I think I will be not voting to support that recommendation.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Clark.
Just along the same vein as Councillor Ribbiak, that the only form of policing this is on a complaint basis. So unless somebody complains after the fact, there's nothing that can be done. We don't go out and police in advance any of this. Is that correct?
That's council's direction, yes.
Okay. All right. Nope, that was my question.
Okay. Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a bit frustrated by some of the logic that I'm hearing around the table. Because if we applied that logic to every time a bylaw came forward or was changed or amended, we would accomplish absolutely nothing if we were worried that the person or persons involved in the amendments or the alterations to the bylaws were untrustworthy, we didn't believe they were going to do what they were going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We would sit here with our thumbs parked. And in fact, we have to act in good faith with our citizens. This gentleman has brought a proposal forward. It complies with virtually every policy plan that has been put out there with respect to development and use of agricultural lands. He's telling us that he will keep it small scale. He's telling us it will be agriculturally related. Staff has said that they will put a site plan in place which offers further controls. It offers and addresses some of the concerns that were put forward in the public meeting with respect to buffering and sound control. The size is limited and just by the mere fact that he can only store 3 vehicles on site outside of his building. So if we can't act in good faith with trusting our citizens when they put a proposal forward, what can we do? Yes, we are a complaints-based bylaw system. It's the same with the sign bylaw. It's the same with the noise bylaw. It's the same with the snow removal bylaw. So there is really no difference here. We are depending upon the public. If they are unhappy, and there may be some complaints, if there are complaints put forward, then I'm sure that our bylaw officer will go out there and investigate, and if the person is found in contravention, he will issue the appropriate warnings and the appropriate penalties if it's not corrected. That's the way our system works. If we turn down every proposal because of the fear that they might go outside of the bylaw, then what are we doing here? So I will vote in favor of this because I think the gentleman has put forward an honest proposal. I think staff has put the controls in place that will give us some and help us to answer the concerns that were raised at the public meetings. And the fact that there are other commercial properties down the street is irrelevant. This use is allowed within all of the policy statements that I've read. So I will support it.
Anybody else before Councillor Ribbiak? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Couple of questions, just for points of clarity. So Councillor Ribbiak talked about it, the report talks about it, about farm plates. So if it's a truck, if it's a car, if it has a farm plate, then that could be serviced at this location. Is that correct?
Well, farm plates, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Farm plates apply to trucks and to trailers, yes. Trucks and trailers,
Not cars. So trucks and trailers. So if it's a truck and it has a farm plate, fair game, right? Okay. As I understood it, Mr. Chair, last meeting, the proponent may not have seen the recommendations. They certainly have seen them now, I'm sure. So Are they, they're not here this evening, are they okay with the recommendations before us with all of the changes, the site plan, the smaller scale, et cetera?
Mr. Lerner?
We contacted the applicant, and we contacted Mr. Ozog as well, as he had filed a letter of concern on Friday and today. Two different parties in the office have both contacted them on both days, and we have not received a response from either one.
Okay, my question is not necessarily about the complainant, but the applicant. The applicant's fine with the recommendations here. I guess I'm asking that, Mr. Chair, because my understanding from the public meeting was that the application was for a larger scale, a medium scale, let's say, operation. This is for a very small scale operation, a scaled back proposal. Or am I wrong?
Mr. Lerner?
Well, the applicant didn't provide a presentation at the public meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Jennings and I met with the applicant at the property. The building is relatively small. It's only a portion of the agricultural building that he's intending to occupy. I think I had the size in here.
1,400.
1,400 square feet or so. The and we indicated that at that time that he would be subject to site plan control if it was approved by council, so that we could regulate what portion of the property is used, if any, outside of the garage.
Okay. I had a final question, but I forgot what it was now, Mr. Chair, in listening to that to that answer. One other question, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
This is also not specific to this applicant. It's this applicant making the proposal, but it's for this property. So it's, if this is approved, it's forever. It's not temporary. It's not, if this applicant moves away, it changes. This is forever. Is that correct?
Mr. Lerner?
Thank you. Like all zoning, it's forever until council changes it, or a subsequent owner or the existing owner applies to have it changed.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, I'll use some latitude, Councillor Ribiak, if you don't mind, and first time, Councillor Durley, and I'll get back to you, okay?
Of course. The reason this is before us, Mr. Chair, is because they're trying to make it legal for them to do what they intend to do. At the last meeting, I heard that we needed to go back and see if there were ever any complaints in history about them doing something illegal. This is going to allow them to do something legal. They're going through the proper process. We have the ability to give them the opportunity to do what they want to do, and it's all within the all the regulations that are in place, and certainly nothing is non-compliant with any policy or procedure that's there. So, in fact, they're asking us, can we do something? And we're saying, yes, legally you can, and this is what you can do. So I agree with the comments of Councillor Kersey that we're providing them the opportunity to do something legally. If they choose not to be legal about it, then we have some action to do, but we're giving them the opportunity to do it. I don't see why there's even any argument about that.
Thank you, Councillor Durley. Councillor Ribiak?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me just clarify, if I can, why I take the position that I take and why there is logic behind it. And I appreciate my colleague's comment with respect to the logic that he's heard around the table. He heard it from me, and if he has an issue with it, then I think I should be able to clarify that a little bit. The logic, I think, goes something like this. We have zoning for that property in place now. And that zoning is in place now because that presumably is what we in the town wanted it to be when we instituted it that way. What's being asked for now is an exception to that, or a move away from that. And that question does reflect, of course, the wish of the individual who owns the property, and he has a tremendous right to want to use the property as he sees fit, and I think that's something that ought to be respected. But what also needs to be respected is the wider community, which has zoning in place now and may wish, at least in some quarters, to preserve that zoning the way it is. And we here, I think, on council are meant to be here not only to represent the wishes of those looking for change or relief from standards that currently exist, but also those who are in the community who might want it to stay the way it is. So I think that it is appropriate to reflect all those views in this discussion, and I think that democracy carries with it, I guess, its own logic, and that perhaps is the logic that we're talking about here, and that if the final vote on a subject is not unanimous, then maybe it's because it is in fact an accurate reflection of a number of views that may exist in the community. So I don't believe that it is inappropriate for us to consider from time to time that a staff recommendation that something is legal and possible might not be followed. I don't think that is at all out of place or illogical to represent, if in fact those represent the views of people who are out there. I have heard, perhaps others have as well, I don't know, some fairly strong representation to the effect that perhaps the zoning of that piece of property ought not to be changed. And I think I've reflected those views here, and I think that it's appropriate to do that. And I would hope that however badly or illogically that might be expressed, at least that view might be respected, and we can carry on with the vote with regard to that.
Thank you, Councilor Rybak. It is, if I may, that is not unusual. We have had issues before this General Committee and Council before where not everything is unanimous, and you're right. You're absolutely right. But we all are vested with the responsibility and role to consider those viewpoints, and particularly in light of the fact that where applicants provide us information they wish to make changes, and that is true. That's the democratic process of the council. I mean, it doesn't run on party lines. So what you're doing is you're restating and reflecting, which is quite normal, those viewpoints of the others who are opposed. In the context, though, in the case of this particular situation, we are weighing all of that in the view of what someone has done. It makes no difference. Whoever it is applied through what is considered the democratic planning process of applying for amendments. So I wasn't here for when the debate took place, but nonetheless, I was there when the public meeting. And the bottom line is, however we stated, and I must say, we have had those times when we've not all been on the same side, but that doesn't mean that's wrong. And if there are non-compliances, if there is issues that this person is operating ultra vires of his, they can be very severely condoned and in some cases fined. But the same token, we also want to make sure that we're listening to what our other proponents say and our other constituents, and I respect that, Councilor Rybak, quite a bit. So on that note, unless there's any other further comments, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chair, I appreciate it. I just want to say that, I certainly appreciate both sides of this, and as Councilor Rybak indicated, and others, yourself, respect around the table for the various viewpoints, and it's good to have a discussion like this, because it does bring out those that level of respect around the table and bringing those viewpoints forward, and that's our job. To this particular issue, Mr. Chair, I'm not compelled by the case that's before us. Quite frankly, with this particular application. In other situations, we may have, there's not a lineup of farmers here saying that we need a space to fix up these vehicles, et cetera, and this will be their only opportunity. I think there are other opportunities. And Mr. Chair, I am compelled by the fact that should this be approved by council, it will be forever until it's changed again. It's not a temporary situation with this particular individual. And so for me, as I think about the activities in our community and look to the various zones that we have, this is a zoning issue, the zones across our community, if I were starting it out and playing a computer game like Simulation City or whatever, would I necessarily put the zoning that's being requested in this location? I wouldn't. So I'm I'm not in favor of the recommendation from staff, and I'm going to be voting against it. And in light of that, Mr. Chair, I think the motion that's before us is a three-part motion. So I wonder if we can just divide it so that certainly we can at least receive for information the first piece. So if we can, when it's called, if we can ask for it with the, I guess, the two sections, Mr. Chair. The first is that we receive it for information, and the second is the substantive portion. So I wonder if we can do that, Mr. Chair.
We need to move her.
No, just divide is just a request.
Just to request consensus to divide? All right, everybody in? Okay, so the very first part is that, go ahead, Councillor
If I
Derby,
may,
go ahead.
There has been many arguments from the farm community, Mr. Chair, about the sustainability of farming enterprises. And in fact, there has been a great deal of attention given to the words value added. And in fact, if somebody can do an agricultural pursuit and have a value added, that certainly helps to sustain the farm and keeps things agriculturally, because there is a farm community, and with these things added to it, these people are now able to pay their bills and their taxes and able to survive. So, in fact, I know that there's that out there. When we had the debates about the green belt and all that stuff, I attended several sessions that were within and outside of Pelham, and the words value added always came forward. And I'm thinking that wherever possible, we should give the farm community the leeway to act in that way, to have the value added to the farm wherever possible and wherever feasible, because there are some situations, I agree, that it would be a detriment to the community rather than an advantage. But I feel that to give the agricultural community the benefit of a value-added activity on the property certainly is in order, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. All right, so let's move. We have divided the recommendations. The first recommendation is that General Committee Planning and Development Division receive report P18/12 for information. All in favor? The second is that for reasons outlined in Planning Report P1512, General Committee Planning and Development Division recommend that Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment AM0511, John and Sue Campbell, part of Lot 15, Concession 14, former Township of Pelham, Town of Pelham, and further that staff be directed to prepare the necessary bylaw amendment for consideration by Council.
Mr. Chair, may I request a recorded vote, please?
By all means. Recorded vote. Okay.
So on the second two paragraphs of the recommendation, I will call in alphabetical order. In favor or oppose, if you could speak your wishes. Councillor Kersey.
In favor?
Councillor Clark.
Opposed?
Councillor Durley.
In favor.
Councillor King is absent. Councillor Papp.
In favor.
Sorry, I'll call you last. Sorry.
Okay.
Councillor Ribiak.
Opposed?
Councillor Augustine.
Opposed.
And Councillor Papp.
In favor.
So you have a tie motion, or a tie vote, which means the motion is lost.
Tie vote, the motion is lost.
Before we entertain the next motion, certainly be remiss if we didn't thank a member of our staff, and that is Mr. Lorimer, who has served as our acting CAO for the last number of months. We appreciate, as has been said around this table, I think a number of times, we certainly appreciate your your leadership, your willingness to wear two hats or more on many occasions. Especially your involvement in terms of working together with us with staffing and moving along with directors and other managers, etc. So that entire process. And so on behalf of members of council, I want to say thank you very much, and the community as well. You continue to move forward on all the activities of the town. Through this period that you were acting CAO, not only were a number of new policies brought forward or reports like we had this evening to make sure that there was a little bit of cleanup on some of the things that were here on our tables and waiting, but also with your other hat of planning and development services, there's certainly been a number of things moving forward on that, and most notably the official plan and the East Vaughan Hills Secondary Plan, which took a considerable amount of time and will continue to take a little bit of time to bring those to conclusion. So if I might, on behalf of council, I want to express a deep appreciation for you and your service these last number of months and serving as acting CEO. So thank you very much.
Here, here.
I would like to take the opportunity to thank council for the opportunity to do it, but also to thank Chief Phelps and Ms. Pupo and Nancy and Al Mantle and actually all of staff. Everybody has been very supportive of me, and there's no way that I would have been able to do it without their support. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, and we appreciate the staff as well. Thank you, Craig. It has been moved by Councillor Ribbiak, seconded by Councillor Durley. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following matters under the Municipal Act 2001 as outlined below. Items under the Municipal Act Section 239 to D, Labor Relations or Employee Negotiations. 2 items. I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. That motion is carried. This public portion of the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.